Position of the hips so that the knees are motioning open and the back of the body has the belt at the lowest part of the back of your waist around the below the sacrum. So it is a sense of like a bucket. It's like the pelvic kind of bucket support, a lined bucket. So as the blocks put themselves in the space that's symmetrical for your legs, doesn't mean that you feel symmetrical when you put the props that look balanced. It doesn't mean your body's going to assess that to balancing. So prior to putting on any extra weight on your body, be assured that the blocks are in evenness. And then as you assess where the sand could be, feet, belly, ribs, or one on each inner thigh layer. Feel when we move into this pattern of working with deeply centering and a skillful means of using the breath in the posture to align the mind and the consciousness. I want you to let your arms settle down, feeling where they're balanced and relaxed. And then let your eyes close, turning the focus slowly and kindly inward. And gather your attention on the even rhythm of your breath. Feel if the breath is even when you have a weight on the body, especially if it's on the breathing muscles, right? If it's attached to the corridor of the waist, you'll likely notice the energy of gravity internally. So we start in a position where we take a few minutes to place the body with intention to restore. That's important, to find a wave of the bones in a shape that kind of alerts the insides to center and replenish with the breath, but also the position of the bones. So we start with this knee open position, spine long, chest muscles gradually opening with the inhale for a count of 4. Feel the belly naturally soften and lift. And on the exhalation, feel the belly relax towards the spine. Now the diaphragm has this exercise occurring, especially if there's sand upon your center. It's a bit of a strengthening diaphragmatic experience, and the exhalation likely is able to lengthen or at least be experienced. That you can notice the exhalation versus just the inhalation. Now the arms will move back overhead. And if the hands can be separated and the experience of balance in the ribs, if the sandbag is a little much for you, or if you just don't have one on the rib cage, that's fine. You'll get a feeling here of how the blanket under your head is supporting you. So I'm going to pull my blanket so it's really at the center line, kind of the, I guess it's not center, it's more occiput, right? So right where you can notice the brain stem, and that bulge at that spot is where I'm trying to get my blanket so that my neck can release. And then as I get a hold of my blanket right now, I'm also working on the feeling of my triceps, and it's a pretty easygoing tricep position. It's just bending my elbows and encouraging them to go towards, a little bit up towards the ceiling. but it's not difficult. It's kind of nice to do tricep work on your back versus sitting upright. Noticing how it's pretty easy this way, but it's still doing the same functional movement. So I want you to try to keep the elbows in that hooked, bending position. Relax any finger grip on a blanket, and then feel if you can get your hands maybe touching to the very short end of the bolster behind you, the elbows in that hooked position. So they're bending, of course. They do lots of that in their lifetime, huh? And then feel if you can actually bring your elbows a little closer in towards the sides of your head, noticing that circulatory kind of zest in your armpits, armpit chest. Reach your hands together, interlace your fingers, and turn the hands inside out, reaching them both back. I suppose they have to go together if they're interlaced. And then as you experience that motion of moving your wrist, your hands inside out, inhale with just that comfort of being capable to breathe deeply. And then as you exhale, let the belly relax, keep the abdomen soft and restful. And then move your arms apart, take any sand off your core away. And as you start to manipulate where that belt is going to be, if it's a buckled belt, you're going to simply unlatch the belt or loosen it up if you have a belt with a cinch. And then you're going to slide that belt off. I want you to get the belt so it is besides you. It's kind of right off to the side yard. And then bring your knees to point up and take the right foot, lift it and cross it to the left knee, and placing a ball or a block besides the left upper outer thigh. If you have a ball, you're going to kind of smush it into the upper outer left thigh, kind of at the, maybe a little bit below the greater trochanter. So let it be more of a feeling appropriate position, not that it has to be right on a certain specified body piece. But as I lean into the ball or the block, could be either, you're going to hold onto your right knee with your left hand and let the right shoulder be heavy and relax. So there's no striving with the right arm quite yet. Try to get your lower levers so they have an ability to kind of tilt, right? I'm not falling over onto my left hip. That's the only reason I have the ball or the block is so I don't fall over and lose my symmetry in my pelvis. So abdomen is relaxed. My hand is holding that right knee. And the balance of the muscles and the bones is that you're actually trying to work your muscle right now versus like how we started with the bones, alignment of our bones. So try to pry a little bit into that right hip. If you're steering on the outside of the left foot, that's okay. If you're kind of on the side of it, you're not left foot straight down, bottom of the foot is down. Maybe you're on the side. So you can steer this right leg farther across. Okay, now feel that and take your belt and place it under your right foot. And you're still kind of in this supported angle with this ball or block, but it might not be necessary for you coming up to have that much bulk, but you'll see. You're going to take your belt so that you're holding it with the left hand, the right leg, the right foot is into the belt. And now my left knee stays bent. And I take that right leg across from the midline over to the left side. And I try to let the weight of my foot really drop into that belt. So I would imagine you don't just feel this in the leg outside, but maybe a lot on the inside layer. So it really depends on where your tone is. For instance, if you're working with health around the knee, oftentimes you're going to have a little bit of imbalance with what side of the leg is stronger or stiffer, right? So we're trying to see if we can get one side of the leg to have a little bit of tension in the muscle that you're stretching. And then as you push a little bit into that belt, you got to tug. Now, if your wrist is really unhappy with this belt situation, you can wrap the belt around your lower arm bones and then kind of grab it easily with your hand so it doesn't stiffen the fingers as much. Kind of the gymnast wrap. So now I'm going to take away the focus of pushing into my heel. I'm just letting gravity kind of draw that leg to the left for a few more seconds. Good. But keeping with that awareness through the right hip. Now, bring your right hand to that right outer hip, right? Think about hip, not so much the thigh itself, a little higher. And it's almost like you want your thumb, that positioning between the thumb and the index finger, that webbing, just to kind of press that onto that connector from your pelvis to your hip bone and consider that to move downwards. It's not going to go very far. It only goes with gravity. And then I bend the right knee. Be a little careful. If it's a clicky hip, what I want you to do is keep a hold of that with the right hand and then pull that right leg back in. Use your belt, strong pull, keep the knee turning out now. So it's externally rotated like when you started with knees out. And then take the belt off your foot. Bring the right foot down, windshield wiper the knees, move any props away that are in your way of your legs, windshield wipering. And then as we set the body into the second side, take a moment with that balance, redirect yourself if you slid down off the bolster a bit, and then press into your right foot, lift the left foot up and cross that ankle to the right knee. And the nice thing sometimes about the specifics of moving us through this lined up practice is to clarify for yourself when you put a ball or a block on the outside of that right leg. Right, you could try the block and just kind of see. If you've got a foam block, that's nice versus a wood block or a cement brick, something that has a little tiny bit of softness to it, but it still is a connection to keeping the pelvis level. We hold the left knee with the right hand and see if you can steer that left leg from the hip, right? You can even put your left hand on the top connector of the left thigh into the hip and then to the pelvis. And then you're trying to get from your knee and your hand, you're moving that towards you. Maybe it goes an inch, maybe it resists more. But doing the work that you can. Of course, if you didn't have this block or the ball, it would be a little bit of a sloppy balance. So it's maybe not the accurate word, the most complimentary wording. But, you want to find some support for this pelvis. So from rim to rim, it's really balanced with the ball or the block on the right side. Okay, now as you hold on to that left knee, your left hand could be relaxed on the floor, but give all the focus into that left hip. Yeah, and if holding the knee and you kind of rock it a little bit, try to keep that motion of pulling towards you, not across. The leg is going across already. So a few more seconds here. Feel through the left hip. Keep the spine relaxed. It's kind of like when you're trying to receive something where you don't want to flinch, right? Your hip is kind of in a very challenging position. So you'll try to let your spine relax and your ribs and your breath and continue on the program, working into that left outer hip. Really keep with it to the next shape. So when we come back center, we take our belt and then we place it around the left foot. And I just go right into it. I'm going to hold on to the belt. I might wrap it around the arm bone a little bit. And then my right leg is pretty much the same as the last shape. And I cross that left leg over to the right. So push into your belt and let the spine arch. Feel the natural kind of groove of the bolster, putting a tiny bit of an indent into your back shape so that you're not in any version of slouching. If anything, we have the benefit of reducing that during this time. I suppose you can do some of that in your home practice if you do, but noticing the ease of a bolster under your back to open the chest. Take a few focus moments here. If the left hand feels like it gives you an adequate direction, if it's on the left hip, going away from you, and moving it downwards. Just keeping that circulation steeping in the hip steep. Now, I can tell that if I have the belt at the foot and I'm holding, there are some patterns in the leg that feel, you notice where the stiffness is. So you wonder if it's getting rid of any of it. Is it reducing that deepening pressure? So when we come out, we're going to bend the left knee, and then I want you to take the belt from the foot, and then as you push down into your feet even, you're going to put a block under the pelvis. So I'm going to lift up my hips. I'm going to take one of my blankets back, so I only have the bolster under my spine, and there is a blanket under that, so that is true. Now, if I have my hips in this the first setting of the block, that's fine. But if you want to bring your feet out a little bit wider, press down through the roots of the toes, lift the heels a bit, and then feel your upper back shoulders to the bolster. You can push down to your feet, lift the hips, and then move the block up the next height, and feel where it positions under the back of the pelvis. So it's maybe a little bit different support for your sacrum. If you can get up to that second height, right? So the block is not flat, it's up at that second level. You'll likely, if you can do that, you'll do that. If not, then you go with the first setting. And then we'll take our belt overhead, both hands hold the belt. So it's a complementary opening of the chest. And then when I bring the legs straight down, I'm working with that full supported back bend, right? It's not just a bridge pose. It's bridging both the legs, not just the pelvis, and the chest all the way up through the chest muscles. So feel the stance of your feet, if they're wide. Noticing if they're closer in, if that gives you a keen sense of circulation in the legs. So you want to find a position where you feel like your breath is like, you can't quite get the full relaxed breath on this one. It's rather like it's a gulp of breath, and then it takes you some energy to get the exhalation rounded out. So it's a back bend, so it's more invigorating. So if you bend your knees now and you stay with the pose with the block, you might feel a little bit more secure. Benefits are different, right? Legs straight, I have a little more stretch in my hip flexors and the psoas. Legs bent, not a lot of stretch in the psoas. So choose one of the two. If you're going the straight route and the feet need to separate so that you don't have so much rotation outwards, take the feet farther apart, but with that awareness of the heels down, tiny bit of mental organization around internal rotation for a second. Now, with the waist in its plain state of balance, we're going to move it to side sage so we can kind of reclaim this core through its side, so we weave in the thoracics. We'll call it the thoracic weave. So let the feet slide in if they're not already on the flooring, bottom of the feet, and take that stance so you may still be holding your belt overhead. If you are, keep that assembly and find where the hands are wide enough on the belt that you can feel almost a balance in the chest muscles, but it isn't necessarily balanced everywhere in the shoulder or everywhere in each arm, right? Each arm has some differences. So can you get that hold on the belt where you feel pretty even in the chest circulation? You're noticing that these joints, shoulders, that's where the complexity, right, of symmetry comes in. But many of us can get our respiratory muscles in the chest to feel somewhat symmetrical. So claim that first, okay? Let go of your belt. And then as you bring your arms down besides you, you're gonna push down into your feet and lift up your hips, slide the block away. And when you're lowering down, can you lower and roll to your left hip and then come around so that you're still grounded. It's still floor-based practice. You're gonna pivot your bolster. You're gonna acquire any weight that you like to use, sand or rice, ball or block. And I would encourage you to put your blankets now so that the belt goes off in the side yard and your blankets are in a stack. So I have 2 blankets, quarter folds, about, they could be accordion folds or tri-folds, however you like to call these folds, but they are wide on my blanket. And it's a little bit lower than maybe my bolster when all things are considered and I'm pushing into it because it does flatten more than my bolster. Well, that's everybody's a little different with their bolsters, how they're flattening out. But I wanted to make sure that you have, as much as I can make sure here, that you have something on the inside of the right leg. If you have absolutely 0 knee issues or discomfort in the knee, you might not be interested in putting something on the inside because you like to sweep your leg really far back, which is fine, but I want you to feel really supported. The only idea with something on the inside of this leg is so that you can let the side get the full stretch, not trying to hold the leg at all. So I want you to lean your left side down into your bolster and then have a block overhead on the other side of the blanket, okay? So you're leaning in your left side. It doesn't need to be emphasized exactly the articulation of the bone pieces that we're pushing down, but it's a generic side reach. So my left arm is weaved between the bolster and blankets. And then once that thoracic weave begins, I put my hand on the block overhead. That works good for me. I'm finding that if I go with a little bit of a higher block, it's nice. At first, I always went with a lower height, but after being taught of putting my hand on things like a chair, then I was able to start noticing that it's about achieving as much distancing as I can with the levers and then letting my body settle into what's underneath, holding me up. And as you kind of level out, then you experience that sheath in the muscles to let the opening and releasing begin. So come into the side stage at your own pace. And once you get to that positioning, feel the breath, feel the experience of inhale through the costals. And let the inhalation fill the ribs. And the exhalation lengthen the side. Of course, if there's any little inkling of pulling in your right side of your neck, that could be a relationship of you either looking to a screen, right? That can be an issue, right? You'll tend to Start using different facial muscles just for that positioning and movement with your eyes. So you might just notice that and let your eyes relax, let your head maybe turn down a little into the blanket, and then feel what's appropriate with the block for you. Maybe this is too high. You know, it's nice information, but maybe you prefer it a little lower. Now the lower leg, both of the legs need to be relaxed in this shape so that the midsection can get that full benefit of a deeper inhalation through the ribs, kind of an exfoliation of sorts. Okay, now feel where the body turns towards the ceiling a little bit and where you're actually pivoting the energy of the ribs towards the ceiling. Okay, so it's not about trying to push and put energy into lifting yourself up with your arm muscles. It's about moving the ribs to open. So you're basically letting the body gradually turn so that the ribs feel a little bit of exposure. Rib posure, rib exposure. You know, with this reality of how our daily rib experience is, which is actually a little more boxed in, right? So this is a practice where we can experience, even if it's some mindful moments, of the possibilities of our ribs and how we can kind of reframe and rehabilitate the breathing muscles. It's a lot of inquiry about breathing muscles, strengthening, toning, what their capacity is. Now, and part of that is learning about that experience in your regular kind of boxed rib shape, which is just the reality of your condition, right? We generally have a condition of the ribs a little more boxed. So we're going to feel what that's like and what our possibility is there. So I want to keep these rather symmetrical today, not too much wandering in between the shapes. So when you move your sand away, it's a fairly long side sage. It was a little more than 2 minutes. So we're going to turn to all fours. Now, I imagine that you might want a blankie under your knees, but when you bring your right knee into your left knee, let your back muscles like rehab a little bit here. Get a feeling of them kind of softening and warming up into the stretch of the back. And then when you come around to table, you might prep it if you feel better with your blanket under your knees. Just slide it next to your bolster, next to your legs, and then come onto the blanket and your knees go onto that. It's just easier. No reason to stress yourself out more on your knees. So when I'm here, what I want you to do is put a ball or a block, either are fine, but you're going to put that blocker ball between the thighs. So the blocker ball, the block would be narrow, okay? Now, it's often taught in standing poses to have the block really high, so it's only going to go so far anyway, right? But when I have that block, I want to place it so that when I put my hands onto the floor and I can walk them forward, my blanket's a little bit in my way, I get as much into this table pose as I can. And with the tops of the feet onto the ground, I'm going to curl and bring my chin towards my chest or my chest towards my chin, whichever you think comes first. Round the back, hollow the belly, and then arch the spine. So at first you're practicing cat-cow with very little emphasis of what you're doing with the object that's centered with the knees, right, or with the thighs, right, center of the thighs. So you just have it there. It's a block to open up the back, so it's actually a structural spacer, okay? That's basically that. We'll call it our spacer. So round your back, and when you scoop and round, what happens when you let your toes hook under? So you can see that the toes are under the legs, kind of get a little bit prompted. The muscles kind of juice up there. And then you're gonna lift up your knees. And it feels almost like you're gonna do a somersault when you have that approach, but you're gonna step your feet so that you have a little more stability in the legs. And I want you to keep that awareness of the block or the ball, but not get so focused, not so centric on squeezing into that, but let that be a spacer for you, okay? So the sitting bones reach back behind you, of course. We're trying to keep that element. And then walk your hands on back kind of carefully, because you can't move your feet forward. So you are relying on your arms to get you back to your feet. So with 2 feet and sitting bones up, you're going to try to keep a hold of that block comfortably. If it needs to go a little bit lower, like just above the knees, that's okay. But feel where your arms are reaching onto the bolster, and your head is dangling from the spine. Any of these, if you need to bend your knees a little bit, do so, but try to reach your sitting bones back and lengthen the legs. The block or the ball is just a spacer. Don't spend energy on trying to push into it, but don't lose it. You have to have a little bit of pelvic grip and tone in the pelvic floor to keep it. So now when you're here, can you let go of that hold onto the bolster completely? And then let your hands release down, whether they're holding the elbows or they're dangling down. And now with that object still spacing between, kind of notice if you can bring your feet a little closer together. Now you still have the object. This is generally taught where you keep going in with the feet and keep going. I'm not sure how people get their feet together in this actual exercise, but I've only observed it. Don't know how my legs would do that. But as I'm here and I notice my limit, my inner thighs are a little bit awake with having something stuck. Foreign object. Okay. Now be sure your feet are fairly parallel, so you're not struggling too much to get them closer. They are what they are, accepting where the spacing is. And then I want you to bend through your knees. And then instead of dropping your head down, you're going to lift up a little bit and bring your hands just above your legs, above your knees, so they're at the kind of the caps of the quads, right where you have your quad shield. And then feel your hips. Now be really ultra careful of your knee joint here. So I want you to feel that little bit of that tilt back of your hips, but not so much of a slamming into the knee where you really feel it gripping up. If it's too grippy and it hurts, you come up a little taller with your stance versus squatting as far. But you keep that spacer. Okay. So now this time we're going to take the block or ball out. You're going to hold on to it with your hands, block or ball. So this time you might want the block, I know, because it's a wide space. And then when you stand up, you'll see most of me, but when you come up, I want you to keep the feet so that they're hips a distance, and you're actually going to try to launch your weight into the roots of your toes so your heels are a little bit up, and then see if you can bring your block straight up overhead. So hold on to the ball or the block straight overhead and lift up your heels for a moment. Keep that inner thigh energy tone. You might have a little more tone because you had something in the center. And then when you start to bend your knees here, lower your heels, good. Keep your heels down, let your hips stretch back. Inhale, look towards the ball or the block. Feel that little arch through the spine. And then exhale, you're gonna lower down. And then put the block aside and start to come back forward to hands, knees. But as you're coming forward, you're gonna be just above the blanket with your knees. So you're kind of in this pouncing pose, like you're gonna jump forward position. And then as you lower your knees down, take the knees a little farther back on the blanket and come into upward facing dog. So that would mean I lean my hips completely into the bolster. and I stretch my chest forward and up. Yeah, let your spine move in and the chest move up by the strength of your back and your arms. A very strengthening pose for your back. Okay, now feel where that waist lengthens. And then as you're letting your feet relax, I want you to actually use your arms to help bring you back, and then bring your right knee over to the left, and then come into side sage on the right hip. Now you got this blanket scene going on. That's not the same as last side. So if you don't want to get rid of your blanket because it's too cozy, you could put a block under your blanket overhead, right? You could do that so you can keep your blanket. But symmetry in the hips could be important too. So I'm going to encourage you to have something on the inside of that left leg, a block, a ball, or if you can swing that leg far back and that foot on the floor, the pressure of the inner ankle bone holds your leg up comfortably, then don't worry about it. Some of us might get that position without any discomfort. And so discomfort would mean change. Don't do it if it's uncomfortable, unless it's feeling like your muscles are, just getting a little more encouraging sensation. That's another way of explaining it, huh? Discomfort or encouraging sensation, or discouraging. Okay, so block is overhead, my left hand's onto it. Yeah, I like the block high, I like it mid-height. Oftentimes, some height is helpful for my ribs to have that expression of length. And then when the arm is in that reaching position, can you experience the ribs and their feature of movement with your breath? So as you inhale, notice if the expansion is at the lower abdomen and slightly into the rib corners. See if you can feel the costals move with your breath. You can touch the sides of your ribs, right? You can feel if you're getting the breath anywhere in there. And if you're not noticing that and it's pretty dormant, just the stretch is felt, you could put your sandbag closer to the mid rib cage, and then you'll have that response. You'll feel the call and response of the ribs with the sand. Okay, I like it sometimes hooked on the hip because that feels like an area that could be kind of tugged on for my hip and for my ribs. So come into the side sage for a few more moments here. Be present for the breath and that experience of inhalation and exhalation, letting go. Expansion and contraction. And now with that reach of the torso, okay, this is one to spend just a second of noticing the connectors here. So we have this left side lengthening. We're going to piece that together coming up when we're seated. And I know seated poses are a little more intermediate than these kind of low, right, floor based. We're going to still be floor based asana poses, but this is a little bit easier to get that whole length from side to side. Okay. So feel how the core muscles are basically in a kind of they're laid out in a state of being laid out completely. So when you do start to bring your left arm either open, so you get this full spiraling of the ribs and the spine, because the ribs want to get that movement just as much as your spine, kind of reaching and expanding, extending. And then as I bring that left knee to the right knee, you can take your sand aside on the left, and then when you come up, what we're going to do is we're going to take our bolster, okay, to the front of our mat space, and you're going to pick your blankets and bring them in so that you can take a seat onto them, okay? So what I want you to do is, I'll give you the outline with the blocks. So you got to have everything in front of you but your blankets. Okay, they're under you. Okay, so as you take a seat on top, you're going to place the right leg out and you're going to get your belt. Okay, so get your belt together so that you can unbuckle it, and you're going to place it in a wide loop. Okay, a wide loop. How come that door doesn't open for you? Okay, she needs an automatic door opener or something. All right, so I got my belt from my core body, and then I put it around my foot. Okay, so this is going to add a little bit of stimulus in your stomach muscles. So I want you to have your belt so it's around your hip to your right foot. Okay. Yeah, use your belt to support you. There you go. We're getting our belts on. Good. All right, so my right leg is extended out. If you have the left leg centered down and you're on two blankets and it feels comfortable where it touches down, leave that, put a sandbag on the top of the thigh. But if you find that's uncomfortable for you and you have a towel or a ball or another blanket or a little pillow, you might put that under your left knee and then put your sandbag up. And again, some of you don't have sandbags, so you're not going to be adding this instruction on, but something under the knee might be useful for some people. I'm just going to use it for buoyancy. Okay, so I want you to first take a bolster with that belt pretty tight, but you want to feel like you have it on, you have a belt on your waist. It's right at the hip rim. And then I have my bolster in front of me, my blocks are set to the right. And when I lean forward, the belt loosens up its grip around me. But I want you to push into your right foot out to that right side as far as it will go outwards. So you can actually claim the stretch on the inner thigh. It doesn't need to be excessive, but you're going to want to spend a little energy getting that right thigh stretching open. Okay, so as you lean forwards, try to push your bolster as far front as it will go. Really important on this one. Far forward with the bolster. Hands on the short end, head between the arms, back stretching. And then when you come up, we're going to put the bolster on the blocks to the right. So you've got a block on the inside and the outside of the right lower leg. And then I better get my blocks even. And they're the second height. So it bypasses my leg so it doesn't crush my leg at all. The bolster is up. Now, when you turn to your left, this will be kind of specific directions. And I know everyone's turned at little different angles here. But when you turn left, you want to keep pushing with the right foot, and you have the belt under your foot for a reason. So push into your right foot, try to keep that foot so it's not internally rotating down, but you're pushing and pushing. If your belt is not tight enough, you might have to tighten it up. Tighten it up so you really feel it around your hip. And that will help get that core musculature and the posterior core to go in with the spine and up with the chest. Okay, right hand to left knee or just above the knee. And now bring the left arm around to your back. So this arm relaxes on your low back. And your right arm reaches to the bolster on top of it. And your elbow bends and it hooks. so your head can relax into your right hand. Yeah. Yeah, and it might be a while until it feels like, oh, this is relaxation, right? It's going to feel like it's somehow, right, restoring some of these tissues here on the side. But feel where the body turns to the left. And if you need to come up again and hold on to that left knee and get that turnaround in your rib cage, take it as often as you need, even if your time spent in this part of the sequence is movement time. Maybe this lift, this little bit of turn to the left arm to the back, leaning into the bolster is good energy for your core muscles. So feel that connectivity in the center body. Should feel like it's a rather tense area that you're trying to work through. Tensor fascia. So feeling where the right side leans into the bolster. Feel the left side body lengthen. Inhalation, ribs expand. Good. And then feel that exhalation centering down into your sitting bones. Left arm goes up and over the side of your head if that's okay for your shoulder. So let's say you're fairly lengthened out here and you feel like you could go further and more. You could take that right hand and reach it to your right foot, right? That would be your next level of attention. But of course, that's going to turn the arm bone so that the fingers face down to the foot, and then you go further into the side reach. Now, this could be with the hand at position and the left arm behind the back, and turning your head to your right arm. So it's not limited or only both arms reaching. It could be one reaching and one back reaching. So a few more moments. This feels pretty helpful for me to have my arm behind my back so my neck can relax. Looking down to the bolster. Now keep the reach through the foot, the right foot. Even if it's at its edge, like it can't go further, the leg is only so long as we know it, okay? So you want to feel that backward pull right through that left shoulder moving back. If your arm is over the side of your head, you're going to reach the left arm back behind you. And then with that mid body kind of coiling up, you're going to come back up through the center line of the spine. And then we're going to take our bolster to the front again. But this time, when you place the bolster and tip it up, I want you to have it so that it's about maybe 60% of the way that you would go. So it's kind of mediocre intensity right now. So you're working on calibrating that center, kind of the vine of the spine lifting up. Okay, so we're going to lower the bolster down, straight down, so it's straight in front of you, and then hold onto your belt, and then take the right leg forward and put it on the bolster. So it's kind of easy peasy there. We put the leg on the bolster, and then I put my belt up higher, right under the armpit. So it's in this armpit chest area that the belt is. I know this armpit chest conversation is a common conversation I'm getting in my classes I'm taking. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that belt. I had to move the buckle to the other side of my foot so I could tighten it. But you want to get that belt up awkwardly high. And then as you let your foot lift up, because the belt's holding your leg, right? It's kind of nice. Try with this feeling of the right thigh. So it's elevated and it's supported. It's not as if you're trying to struggle and get more hamstring evidence here. So the evidence is in this buoyancy with the leg. So I want you to find a balance where you're moving a little forward, so you're not focusing on this fulcrum of balance. You're moving a little bit forward, so you have to work your lower abdominal muscles. You might know about this work if you were on your spine, flat on your back, and you're pushing your legs forward and back from 90 to 60 degrees. the lower stomach muscles, how they're recruited. So in this position, it's somewhat similar. So what I want you to do is bend your right knee, however long your belt is or tight, it's up to you for being able to slightly bend your right knee. And your arms, you could be holding your belt, you could have your hands on your sides, you could have your arms reaching downwards and back, which is a nice way to go with it to try. And then I'm going to work on getting the spine up, getting my crown of my head towards the ceiling, centering. So it's not so ambitious oriented, right, on how high my foot goes right now. It's the opposite in the stomach. And then I want you to let that right knee bend and see if you can actually start lifting your leg up, right, without pulling on it with your hands on the belt. See if the leg will go up at all. See if you've got any of that psoas kicking in here. Okay, so hands to the belt. It just makes a difference to have hands now. And then lift up your leg. Right, now if you're using purely arms and flexibility to do this work, every once in a while I want you to give yourself some slack on gripping the belt and try to center your spine up and maybe get your leg to lift on the psoas work, right? So I'm trying to avoid this type of action, tilting back as much. I'm centering, I'm trying to get my leg up. There's going to be a lot of contraction in your thigh. Now, bend your knee and slip the belt off your foot. Take the belt, actually leave it around you because you'll use it on the next side, but you're going to keep that right knee externally rotated so the knee is open, the foot is turned open, right? So the inside layer of that foot is exposed. Get both of your blocks besides the bolster and walk them a little forward. Yeah, the sand can stay on the same position. If you have two sandbags, you're going to put one on each upper leg. You might change the sand over to the right leg. It's fine if you want to give that a try. You might feel pretty good. It's a little bit deeper of a stretch, huh? So if you've got two sands, you have a little bit more opportunity to weight the body. I think that's obvious. And lean down. Take a few moments here. Breathe. And now hopefully your right inner thigh, and maybe it grows into the hip, has that sensation. So this ought to be very knee friendly on that right leg. So what we'll do is we'll bring the blocks in, and actually we'll put them over to the left. And I want you to bring that right foot in and stretch the left leg out. And then the ball or the block, actually not the block, but the ball, or if you need a towel, stuff it under the right knee. Or if your knee goes down comfortably, go with it. It's not always so that you need to have something under the knee. If it goes down, there's no pain, you're okay. But also if you've been advised that you need to do a little bit more strength on the inside of the right leg, you might have something under it, so you're not focusing just on flexibility. So this is just a related issue as you mature in the joint. You might notice some support is a nice, is the advanced option. Use the support. So I'm going to take that belt. It's a little bit too tight now for what I just did. So I'm going to put the belt low so it's kind of lining the outside of my left leg. And then I'm going to tighten it up. I hope you can see that pretty good. Yeah, so the belt is to my left foot now. And I'm going to pull on it, not so much that I'm cringing and I have no feeling left, but so much that it keeps me kind of taut in my center, like kind of it brings you a little bit of little upward lift. Now this side, I think we have some relative awareness now of this core piece, so we're going to move on a little quicker. So I want you to put your bolster this time right over onto the blocks on the left. And we're going to pivot from the chest, what was it called? The focus was the armpit chest. So you could put your thumbs like in your armpits, right? The kind of the suspenders look here. But when you have that position of the lift, right? This kind of lift up in the upper core, when you turn right, You're gonna put that right hand back behind you. I can barely get my fingertips down and it works just fine. So left hand to the right leg, and then I want you to let the ribs kind of crawl to get you to turn back. Push into the left foot. Huge piece of it is the left foot pushing. Push, push so much that you feel like you're gonna snap your belt, really push. But you're not gonna fall out of it in any dangerous way. So push into the belt with your foot so that the back muscles become stronger, wider, right? That suggests symmetry in the back. And then when you're ready to go in, you're gonna bring the left arm over to the bolster and you're gonna bend through the elbow, I hope. Now, if you can't get your elbow on the bolster, what are you gonna do? You're gonna pull your blocks and your bolster closer to you and then get your elbow on top if it's easier, okay? So left hand holds your head. Now when you're turning, kind of visualize that you had a belt around your mid chamber of your waist, and that was helping turn you. Like if you had a belt right here to reach from the ceiling to hold, you want to feel like your body is rotating, right? Skillfully rotating. So the right knee might be on a ball, and you might take it away if you're starting to feel yourself kind of careening to the left and a little more length into the front of the thigh. Yeah, this could feel good. Arm could be up, arm could be down behind your right side, your right arm. You decide if you're going to reach for your foot. Maybe it works today to go with that position. I want you to work on that connection if you are holding your foot from the left underbelly of the leg, and then that directs up into the tailbone, and then it connect the dots game here, to that outer right hip, and then from that hip up through the side of the waist, and then back over, right, towards your bolster. So it's just those cycles of kind of dynamic energy through the body. So let's be here a few more moments. We've got a bit more to get to, and I want to make sure we get some of these IT band things in. So stay with that pattern of leaning as much as it works for you today. Now with the right arm still either behind you to the back of that right side. If it's overhead, you're going to reach it back. And then we'll come up into the twist. So we're going to turn to that right side again. Left hand to that right leg. Turn, spiral up through the spinal column. Push into the left foot. And then turn back forward and grab the bolster. And then as you place that bolster forward this time, we're going to move our left leg on top. It kind of keeps us going, doesn't it? Right, I'm going to put a ball under my right knee. It feels like it could use that help. But as I put my belt high up under my armpits, I'm going to let the left leg flow. And you certainly have the option to tighten this belt down and tighten it down if it seems like I can get my leg higher. That's okay. If it's higher, but it's not hamstring tight, it doesn't feel like it's defining your hamstring in discomfort, then go with making the belt a little smaller loop, okay? So as our leg is forward, out of the core, we're using the position of the leg to strengthen our core. So just like we would do if we were on our back, pivoting the leg to strengthen our stomach, keep the leg forward. That may make some sense to us, but I think it takes a little bit of just keep experiencing it. So if I put my hands on my kind of my rib barrel, if my rib barrel is focusing on arching, like pushing my chest forward, I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to keep it centered straight up and down that cylinder. And then I'm trying to let my foot push a little forward to get myself into my core. It's not like you would hang out and do this just for fun. Only with this group of home practitioners. All right, but that's worth it, I think. So feel where your left knee is a little bit bendy. Those of you that like to go for the full, hamstring extension, you might get a hold of your belt with your hands and then lift up the leg so you get a little bit more full pull of the back of the leg. That might feel good, but have a micro bend in your knee, okay? Not a microchip, okay? So you be the decider. I wanted to work on this core, not the flexibility, so I'm going to stay with the leg in front of me and just go with that one. Now you're going to lower your left foot and take the belt off. See if I can get this belt off without holding it. Well, I kind of did. Okay, left knee turns out, and then I put my sand over on my left thigh and take my blocks to the front besides my bolster. So lean into it. If you pull your left foot closer to you, it may be a little more influential for your hip. You will have to decide, but lean forwards, structure the balance through the hip. Now these kind of legging poses, like these legging experiences, are going to measure up in the next few minutes when we go upright. So as much as you can develop this awareness through the legs when we're seated, even though maybe standing stuff isn't always your ticket to yoga happiness, it might work out when you go from seated up. Just kind of see how it frames in your alignment. Just check it out. Give it a try this one time. You can always give feedback either way. So we lean forward. We give it a few more moments. Feel the body in that leaning shape. How could you not? Okay, so when we work our way back up, you have a choice here. When you come out, I would encourage you to have your blocks, they're kind of in a similar place. They're a little bit out from the mat maybe, not too far out though. And then when you come up, sometimes it's nice to go into that spiral, do a little bit of a twist to the left. Some people might choose not to, but keep that right knee open. Okay, the bottom leg. And when you come back center, you're going to move the props off of you so you're not stuck with props waist around your body. And then you're going to bring the left leg back and come around to table. And I want us to take a moment where we have our bolster. Well, might as well keep it there. That's fine. You're going to step your right foot to the top right corner of the space and pivot your bolster now across the mat horizontal. I told you this would go quickly into this, so we get it in. And then I want you to lift up your back knee. And if all your props are too close to your back leg or anything, pull and tuck in your blanket to your bolster. But keep that right knee so it's simply a little back from your ankle, not over, certainly knee isn't over the toes. A little bit back to balance out the glute muscles, okay? Take that left foot so the two legs, right, they're in two different tracks. They're not lined up right in the same plank. So I want you to take your blocks so they're as high as they can go. So you have some weight into your upper body, a little bit of upper body support here. And feel where that right knee is above the ankle or a little bit back from it if that hurts you. And then keep that left leg reaching behind you. Maintain the balance and then bring that right arm forwards. Try to stay with the energy of the arm reaching. If that's a little much, keep the hand on the block, that's fine, okay? So I want you to balance the weight from your right sitting bone to your heel bone. And then we're gonna pivot our waist to the right. So I gotta keep my block under my left hand. If it's a little shaky, you can take the block down because it's not as, high up and doesn't jitter as much. But as you turn to your right, the right arm goes up, the left leg straightens out behind you as if you're trying to get your left heel towards the floor. You could turn the foot out a little bit behind you, but you might also work with a parallel back foot and pivot the right arm lifting up. Take a few more seconds with that twist. My right knee is bending, right? It's a rotation. And then bring that right hand down. And you're going to turn to your left. So in a wide stance, wide angle forward bend. So take both feet into the widest stance, but you don't want to feel like you're Bambi on ice. So you want to find a wide stance, almost Bambi, but not quite. And then feel the thighs moving into the hamstring energy, stretching the sitting bones back. And then your hands could flatten out on the 2 flat blocks. So the fingers open. If that's a bit much for your wrists, you can bring your blocks up and put your elbows on them. But I would do that with a little bit of monitor so that you are not pushing into your wrists at all. That might be really nice to try for once. And that's a good little bit of core work. So my elbows are on my blocks. The blocks are high for me. And then I'm going to keep my sitting bones reaching back. My feet as parallel as I can make them. Okay, I might scoot them in a little bit. And then feel your sitting bones reaching back. Keep that emphasis, the back of the legs opening up. Belly moves with the breath. Okay, now pull the kneecaps up like you're sucking up the quadriceps, the muscles above the knees. Feel those muscles try to grip. Right, so you're pulling up above the knees. Straw suction power. And then as you bring your hands onto your blocks to help you along, I want you to keep that reach of your waist here in the arch, like you're in a cow spine. You're arching the back. Okay, and then scoot your feet in a little bit so you have some ease and control to bending your knees now, bending both. And then when you come up, you're going to have your feet in this wide stance, but not so wide that you're not Bambi on ice here. So you have your feet underneath and then hands to your hips. And then when you come up, you're going to bring your arms open and then feel that pressure down into your heels. Try to get those feet parallel. That's really key so you're not pivoting in. And these inner legs, as if you had a spacer, you don't want them to buckle in, but you want to be able to feel some firm and definition into your quads. And then you're going to actually get a feel here when you bring your arms up, both reaching, lift up your gaze, bring your weight back a little bit into your heels so you're balancing on both of the feet in a wide stance. Bring your arms open and then come into that forward motion, grab your blocks. Turn to your right leg, back to that forward stance, right foot forward, back foot pivots. And then as you bend through that right knee, step the left foot forward and switch the right leg now behind you and press that heel to the ground as close as it will go today. Keep the strong bend in that left knee. Not so much over the ankle, but maintain so you have some circulation benefit here all the way around the side of the knee into the side of the leg. And then we start to bring the left arm up and we turn to the left. Arm goes up, that right leg is straight behind you, left knee is bending. Let's say you're working a little more in the IT band, you might try to straighten out the left leg here a little bit and just kind of feel the circulation through that lateral rotator on that left leg. But the inside of that left foot does press down. I know it already does just to hold you up, but keep that emphasis to balance out the muscles in the back of the left leg all the way up into the glute, the buttock muscles. Yeah, make it about those bigger packed muscles versus the joint capsule on the knee. So make that glute, the rear work. Rear in gear. Rear gear. Okay, left hand comes down and then feel that left knee supported, the right leg stretching back. And we're going to start to lower down to sit on the bolster. I'm going to give you 2 options. Now, before you decide, feel where that right heel stretches back and it's up in the air, right? So it's not to the floor. Now, you could lower the back knee and walk the left foot across through pigeon pose to get to sitting on your bolster, right? So that would be knee down, walk your foot across. Or you could bring your right foot forward, take your feet in a wider stance, come back with the knees, bending the knees, sorry, the knees are forward, I hope. Come back with your rear and then bring your hands to your bolster and sit. So those are two ways of going in. Blanket off to the side, one blanket back, blocks beside you, and then let's lower onto our back with our knees drawing in, one blanket under your head. And then when you have your knees in this bending medley, I want you to get your sand. If you have no sand, you're going to get a belt. And you're going to, first option would be sand onto your feet and then press your feet straight up. Okay? Those of you that have no sand, you can take a belt across the bottoms of the feet, right? So if you don't have sand, I'm going to add the belt so it kind of is a visual. You put the belt across your feet and then you would pull. And if you have it in a loop, sometimes that's kind of nice because you can let your arms kind of rest into the belt and keep that pull. This actually feels pretty nice with both of them, to be honest. Kind of liking that. That balance is interesting for my back. So you can have either one or the other or both. No requirement to have both if you don't want to. So with the feet as they're lifted up, flex, manage that circulation in the back of your legs, and feel the elbows flow open to a cactus pose if you're not using the belt. Let your mind center back. We're going to do a final spinal series where we basically flush the legs, reverse the effects of gravity to the heart and the brain, and fluff up the hips a bit. So feeling where the pressure is at the back of the pelvis and where the stomach musculature lifts and lowers. Good, let your eyes rest. Feel the balance or the mild challenge in the leg muscles. If they're really jittery and the sand is too much, you can always let it go carefully and use the belt. Teaching the muscles to go in that direction. Now in these final stages, I encourage you to rest your mind on how the organs themselves rest deeply when they're slightly inverted, how it's restorative for the organs themselves. Right, so you're resting them from gravity's downward pull. So even if what you do at home practice outside of these, sessions that have some detail for your practice, you might practice getting your pelvis just lifted on the bolster with either the legs up on the couch or up in the air. Now, when you bend your knees, I want you to get a feel here of the circulation in the hamstrings, that definition. And then you're going to push the feet up one more time and feel the circulation around the knees. Challenged here, and let your feet flex. Try to deliver that support into your ankles. And then as you bend through the knees and feel the legs lower down towards the chest, you're going to carefully assist removing the sand, whether that's with your hands to move it or to carefully drop it overhead, but not on your hands. And then when your feet are in this position of just simplicity and resting without anything onto them, can you let your back muscles soften? And then let your knees go from side to side in air. You can put a ball or block between them, but it might be nice just to be freestyle and let your legs kind of zigzag a little bit side to side. So that means they go into your chest and they kind of circle over to the other side and then back forward and do a little bit of a circular motion. So you're going both directions, circular and side to side. Then it becomes a very improvisational pattern. Right? Some people do a windshield wiper, some circular. So feel the coaching of the stomach to do that circular pattern when you're up on a bolster. And then we'll bring our hands to our bolster. We're going to bring the knees to the chest and then push the bolster forward just enough so that your seat is next to it. Your feet are onto the bolster. And you're going to push down into your feet and lift your hips up. Let the waist lengthen just from the sternum down to the pelvic floor, and then from the pelvic floor to the knees, that space starts to strengthen. If you want to move your blanket away from under your head, we're going to do just a few drawbridge poses before we center out. So if you bring your arms overhead when your hips lift up, that could be balancing for that muscular pattern of lifting, lengthening the front core, and then lengthening the back core to the pelvis. So a few more times. And if you're paced out and tired and want to go into your Shavasana now, that's okay. You don't have to follow every little last wisp of instruction. Cater to your needs here. Okay, now with that pulse of movement, some of us might really notice the cervical flexion there, especially if it feels like it's unnecessary pressure at your neck. We don't want to create more rounded backs, right? So last time, if you're in drawbridge, feel the upper back touching, feel the spine lifting, and you want to get as high as you can with your hips. That's really crucial here to massage all the way through the spinal column, right? Let those discs hydrate. Okay, so feel that glute strength. And then you're going to let your spine lower and be really careful with the knees. If they go a little out, that's okay. Don't get too patterned that they have to always go in. And as the spine releases down, then you take the windshield wiper, arms spread open, take your blanket under your head. And this will be a time where you can do a little bit of improvisation. If one IT band is a little stiffer than the other, you might swing the knees to that side and just stay. You might cross a leg over the other leg and pin that leg and stretch the outer leg for a bit longer. And we'll take an option for our final pose. If you decide you want to stay with this reclining twist and stay with one side for a minute and the next side, and that's better for you to get your sand on your hip and really stretch your side, that's the pose you'll take. And those of you that want to let your legs rest over the bolster's under your knees. You can be here and add a sandbag so it's across the base of the sternum, right? So it's still pretty high though. It's still up to that sternal base. And then the arms resting out. And those that want to bring the legs up the wall or the chair or couch or bed, that's a good option too. So take that final pose. Those that are doing a little bit of that twist and hip work, remember you might cross the leg and get your sand on your hip. And there's nothing wrong with letting this be your final pattern. I'm finding all different ways of teaching and leading that I'm taking. So you'd be the decider here. But settle into that ritual of the extended exhalation. So the inhale is shorter than the exhale. And try to empty the lungs out of the mouth. So you feel an actual physicality connecting to that exhale, since it's a larger sense with the mouth relaxing and your core body moving with the breath. So taking that shape that works. If you were in that crossover, you might change it to the other side. And then you'll get a few moments with the legs on the bolster. Individualize it. Now, if you're in that twist, you're going to come to a final symmetrical position. Those of us in symmetry, if we have legs up the wall, we're going to bring our feet into Baddha Konasana, feet together, knees out. Those of us that are in the bolster under the knees, you might take a little bit of that external rotation at the knees, just pretty mild. Don't make it excessive in the knee capsule, that it just feels that it's lightly externally rotated, knees are open. And if the knees moving out seems to grip up in your sacrum, you kind of notice that, really try to relax your buttocks on the floor and let your space above the buttocks, the lumbar, soften as well. Removing the sand if it's on. And then let's guide our hands to the rib cage, our feet towards the bolster or drawing them down depending on your shape from the wall. And then bring your knees to your chest and you're going to roll to either side, that's inviting, and let your hands bring you around to sitting. Take a second here to balance your seat on top of a blanket or a bolster and feel where the knees motion open and the hands rest on your lap with the palms expansive. Lift up the spine and lift up the heart, but bow the brain into the heart center and arrive there with your hands together in unity. Take a moment in a quieting prayer to honor this life force and to bring support inwards to yourself and outwards to others. Take a deep breath, and with exhalations, bowing into your heart. And namaste.